Set to stun. There you go. All right, guys, here we go. Recording. All right, welcome to this very interesting, large interview that I'm going to be doing today. This was going to be, I think, really, really interesting for a ton of people for a number of reasons. So basically, before I jump into it, these are the guys that are behind an up-and-coming film called Boca. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the title of the film, where it came from, how they funded it, how they shot it. I mean, we're gonna dive into the weeds on this thing. So in this hangout with me is Mr. Doug Daulton. He's a line producer on the film. Also Andrew Sullivan, co-writer, co-director. Geoffrey Orthwein, he's also a co-writer, co-director. And then Joe Lindsay, the director of photography. Hey guys, how are you all doing?
Hey.
Great.
Well.
Hey,
Frederick.
All right, this is good. This is cool. So first of all, congratulations. I saw that Kickstarter. You guys blew that out of the water like within the first, 3 hours or something?
The first day was great. We hit our target at day 6. I was actually flying to Jeff's house towards San Francisco. I'm East Coast in Philadelphia, and there was no internet on the plane. So I get off. I land on the runway, and there's about 20 messages from Jeff and Kat and Brienne, our Kickstarter producers, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is really cool. I want to get into that with you guys a little bit, especially at the end of this. I want to talk about the Kickstarter and how and why you funded it through Kickstarter, and just your overall experiences with that. But first, before we do that, tell me about the film. Like the film itself, where did it come from? What was the genesis? Was it like, Doug and Joe in a coffee shop scratching on a napkin, or what? How did it come about? What was the birth of it?
I want to hear about Doug and Joe scratching on napkins.
Andy and Jeff in a coffee shop scratching on a napkin.
Was someone in a coffee shop?
Much later.
Jeff and I are always in coffee shops.
It's the Boca's pretty much. Coffee shops are responsible for a good percentage of the Boca pre-production and writing.
Yeah.
But initially it was actually kind of the 21st century equivalent of that, in that Andy sent me an email last summer with an initial idea pitch, and we took it from there. Andy, you can probably pick up that.
Yeah,
a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, it's Jeff and I were working on various projects, and they just were. We were writing. Our projects were going to be too expensive to make, and we didn't have inroads to have a studio just say make this, right? And other projects were going to need other people's permission, and Jeff and I just decided we just need to make something, right? Like let's. When you're always going to make a film, the problem is you're always going to make a film, so you don't actually have to make it tomorrow because it's always in front of you. And so 2014, really 13 to 14 became that time where Jeff and I just knew we were going to make a film. And so knowing the constraints we'd have, which is a limited budget, limited time, limited access to crew, to cast, we came up with this idea for Boca. And so I emailed him. Jeff happened to be in town about 2 weeks later. I put together this, cheesy, it's a keynote presentation. So it was about 25 photos that I took when I've gone to Iceland twice before, and other photographers I liked, and just kind of took Jeff through some of the ideas. And then we got together in Los Angeles in August and worked on the outline together, and then really the next 4 drafts over the next 5 or 6 months. So in terms of independent film, it's a short timeline, right? Like we started July 2nd, 2013 was the idea. June 29th, 2014 was finishing principal photography. So really just in a year.
Wow, that's insane. So this whole thing, when I saw it, when I was first exposed to it, I was thinking, what, is this the way that indie films are going to be created in the future? And I want to put that to you guys. Are the days of like you're having an idea and the only way you can get it made is to make a million sacrifices, which ends up impacting the quality of the film, and then no one likes it, and but this one, looking at your trailer for this is a Hollywood. Not that Hollywood's the end-all be-all of quality, but this is like up there in terms of anything that I've seen film-wise, from in major theaters. So, how does that work? I mean, are we in an age now where filmmaking is in the hands of the modern man?
I would say to a degree, yeah, and a lot of that goes into the technology and the democratization across the board, from shooting to post to everything. I think all of those are critical and important elements of that. But what it comes down to, and maybe this isn't the new paradigm, but what happened for Andy and I is, as he said, we had been working on a lot of projects. We've been writing partners for years, but we were stuck in a similar kind of indie film world of like, we just can't get this off the ground. It's not going to happen. It's too big, and so we kind of reset ourselves and we said, all right, so what is accomplishable, and aim for that, and then don't screw around. We decided this isn't going to be something that we're going to do on nights and weekends. Yeah. This is something where it's like, okay, boom, this is us. This is what we're doing. Everything else, we're just going to put a wall up right now, because we have to get this done. Yeah. And I think that, that worked for us, and I would suggest that that probably does need to be the shift in that, if you're gonna go big, do it. Don't do it when you have the time. Don't do it, when you can fit it around your other stuff. Find a way of, and yeah, there has been sacrifices. Absolutely, everyone on the film has made a significant sacrifice in order for it to be the paramount thing.
Yeah. I also think it's key to lean into your constraints, right? Like this film, the idea of Boca was created partly because of our constraints, right? And so I just think it's too, honestly, I think if I hope something changes in paradigms, it's less excuses about, I don't have this money, I don't have this camera, I don't have this thing. Jeff and I tend to admire people who have less but do more than us, than have more. I don't want to be jealous of someone else's content. I want to be inspired by content regardless of what they have. And so for us, Boca was really created out of constraints. That we did not have all the money in the world. We didn't have all the assets in the world. And so we had to be more imaginative, quite frankly. We had to rely on different tool set. And those constraints, I think, helped us in many ways on this film.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like digital judo, right? Or filmmaking judo, where you're using your opponent's strength against him. In this case, your opponent are your constraints, right? So you're using the strengths to your advantage.
Well, and one example of that is when the script was done and they started reaching out to those of us who would become producers and crew on the shoot. When we got the script, it was the first thing you saw, aside from a great story, is this is accomplishable, right? I've had lots of scripts come across my desk where you look at it and you're like, well, that's great, and we can do that for $6 or $7 million. Who's got $6 or $7 million? But when you look at this, you're like, the whole package is compelling. The story is compelling, but it's also something that's achievable. And I think that's a big part of when Andy and Jeff started going around to folks to say, hey, do you want to be involved? People could look at it and get their head around it and say, yeah, we can do this. This isn't some pie in the sky thing. This is something we can accomplish.
Yeah. Now, Joe Lindsay, you're the director of photography on this project, and you guys were shooting this in Iceland. So first of all, I want to say, why did you pick Iceland to shoot this? And as a DP, what were some of the challenges that you ran up on? I've never been to Iceland, and looking at your trailer, first of all, I was saying, wow, it's much more modern than I thought it would be. It looks, it looks awesome. So were you hitting like, okay, we need this particular cable, and we can't get it because we're in Iceland and we got to make do? How did the idea of shooting remotely like that go?
Well, obviously there are challenges on any remote location you go to if you miss something, and so we had tried to have 2 or 3 of everything that we could think of, so that if one thing went down, we'd be okay. We actually had 2 C300s to shoot the film with in case one went down, but we'd also have a secondary rig. In terms of the idea of shooting in Iceland, that was really Andy. It was Iceland itself. We shot there. And Andy, you can fill this in if I don't quite nail it, but Iceland itself is sort of the third character in the film, and there's no way the story itself would have worked out without it being in Iceland. So the decision was kind of out of my hands. It was just sort of what I was left to deal with in a lot of ways. Yeah. And the only and the weather changing in Iceland was crazy. I'd say all of us were pretty run down by wind and sort of surprise hail or whatever would happen. But for the most part, it was just logistics of getting around. It was a really ambitious schedule, and the locations were beautiful. But the reason they were beautiful is a lot of waterfalls, which are really problematic for a lot of electronic equipment. So it was a matter of my first AC, Lane Genslinger, who actually brought the camera packages as well as his lenses. We worked together for a long time, knowing what we were going to be up against with the weather, and did the very best we could to outfit each camera with enough weather protection to get us through the thing. But for me, one of the biggest challenges of Iceland was actually how beautiful it is, because sometimes you're in a situation where you're standing on top of a glacier and you're thinking to yourself when you leave, like, did I get it? I don't know. Like, did I do this beautiful location justice? Yeah. Because we spent so much time surviving each location and not as much time taking in every detail. So that was kind of the biggest challenge for me, both creatively and physically and everything, was just making sure that I could step away from all of the challenges of getting from place to place and the challenges of keeping the cameras up and running, and really be able to keep my eyes open and see what each location had.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to get into some of the logistics of the gear that you guys use. And Joe, I can imagine it's in your DNA to overbring gear, absolutely, right? Yeah. For some reason, I know I could see a lot of Pelican cases in Iceland.
Yeah, there definitely were.
I can imagine the airport was probably like, "What are these guys doing?" All right, so then, I've got my notes here. So, the title Boca. First of all, where did that come from? Just the overall title. And when I first, like I said, the notes here, when I first saw it, I saw Boca. I think Doug, you were the first one to expose me to it. I was like, oh, okay, they're making a photography film that's gonna focus somehow on shallow depth of field and all that, and they're gonna do something cool with that. That's what I was thinking. Then I watched the trailer, and I was like, okay, it has nothing to do. I mean, it has something to do with Boca, but not on a technical basis. Who wants to explain that?
We really just wanted to cover that if the film wasn't in focus, we would have an out.
Blame it on the Boca.
Exactly, totally, just like that.
That's all intentional.
Yeah.
Our first title was just going to be called Vaseline, but then we just went with Boca, and so that either
that
one
could have gone horribly wrong, man.
Yeah, exactly. Different film. Boca. I mean, it's so in the story, Riley and Janai, they're two American 20-somethings who go to Iceland to get away from it all, right? To go on vacation, their first vacation. They've been together for about 6 months, and so they go to Iceland, and about 3 days in, the world disappears, right? And so we'll talk about that later. But Riley's taught himself a lot about photography, and he uses his father's old twin reflex camera.
Yeah. So
he's always taking pictures, right? And he loves using this old camera. He's not about technology. He's more than just a Luddite. Like he doesn't care about cell phones, doesn't care about computers. Actually wants to create something with his hands there. And so we really liked an aspect of Boca that, yes, it's about photography, but it's also, you're defined as much by what you choose not to focus on as what you choose to focus on, right? And so a story of survival about two people who are the last two people on Earth, you are more defined than ever by what you're not focusing on and what you're focusing on. And so it just, for us, it had that kind of dual meaning of photography and well beyond it.
That's cool.
And that's kind of the key. We use it. We don't go overboard with Boca in the film itself. I mean that in terms of talking about it, not in terms of how we shot.
Yeah.
But it is the key metaphor for the film. In terms of they're put in obviously an extraordinary situation, where everyone has the sort of hero daydreams of what you would do in these amazing situations or crazy situations, and of course you'd be the one that saves the day.
Yeah.
But the reality is sometimes you tune into something, you get fixated on something, and it's not always the right thing. And so the concept of Boca as being important and critical and not what the focus is.
Yeah.
Not to be heavy-handed about that. That was obviously the line we were trying to walk, but that's the key idea.
There's also this beautiful thing in a twin reflex camera, and if anyone knows this, you know this, which is you're looking through one lens, but you're taking a picture through the other, right? And so Riley is someone who is always pitching the future, kind of dismissing present, pitching the future. And so twin reflex camera, again, we never talk about it in the film, but he's always looking at a different time than what the picture's being taken. Yes, they're very close to each other, but it's never like perfectly timed. And so he always thinks he's being present, but he's always wanting a future moment, right? And that kind of just, it works well with Riley's story there.
Yeah.
And it is. There's something about looking through a twin reflex camera. When you're looking at Viewmaster, everything's beautiful. And so, as Joe said, Iceland is already beautiful enough, and then you just look through that lens, and there's just this beauty to it again. And so it just has that real flavor to it.
Yeah, that place is definitely on my list to go to. Just looking at your trailer again, the first scene of your trailer where you guys are standing up in front of some placid glass lake, like what? I need to go there. So
well, the crazy sort of inside baseball of that is we shot, that was at the end of it was towards the end of the film. It was the end of a shooting day. That we shot that at 12:30 at night. So that is one of those the sun never goes down situations.
Wow.
That is so that's our Andy and I standing up for the Kickstarter shoot is a midnight shoot, but you wouldn't necessarily know it looking at it.
That's a photographer's dream over there. Constant daylight and beautiful vistas everywhere you turn.
Well, and 3 hours of magic hour, even more than that, really.
There was Joe made a point that's key, which is Joe and I were driving back one Saturday night. This was, I think, towards the third week. It was a long day. It was actually one of our better days shooting, and we were so angry of how beautiful Iceland was. Like, it is just, we were just swearing at it because it is unrelenting. Like, even if it's cloudy, there's a mountain and there's some sun and there's just this opening, and it just would not stop being beautiful.
Yeah, it reminds me of like New Zealand. It has a similar kind of, it inspires a similar anger, I will say. So let's talk a little bit about the angle of the film. So we talked about the title, but one of my favorite films this year that came out was a film featuring or starring Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, or at least the voice of Scarlett. It was called Her, and it kind of reminded me. I love the film, but it reminded me that science fiction isn't always robots and explosions or aliens taking over people's bodies, and sometimes it can be more cerebral, like this film. Are you guys seeing a trend in that, and why did you choose to go that direction with this film as opposed to something more obviously sci-fi?
I think there is a trend for sure. Partly because the big budget sci-fi films do tend to be driven by the robots,
right? Transformers
or what have you. Well, yeah. So obviously we're a low budget film. We're not going to have robots, but. The sci-fi in Boca is we would kind of joke that Boca's really, it's more of a relationship film. It's just dressed up as a sci-fi film. It gives us the context to kind of play with these things. And the end of the world scenario is hardly the newest scenario out there.
Right.
But we did feel like we had our own angle on it.
Yeah. No, I think it's. I mean, from the trailer, I want to see the film. So, we're going to get into this. Release dates and all this. I'll put your feet to the fire so that we can find out when and where we can see it. Before we do that, Joe, I want to get back to you on the gear side of things. You mentioned that you shot this with a C300 or a group of them. First of all, what are those for the DSLR and mirrorless shooters and TWiP audience? What are those strange numbers and letters that you just mentioned?
Sure.
And why did you choose those instead of like a Canon, Nikon, or mirrorless or whatever?
Sure. We decided the C300 is Canon's entry into the cinema camera world after the 5D, 7D blow up a few years ago.
Yeah.
And they've been out and around for a few years, and I use them all the time. And it's a beautiful image and a pretty manageable workflow in a lot of ways. And we had two options really in terms of what we had access to. And it was important to us that we had, because of the restraints that we talked about before, in terms of availability in Iceland, we wanted to be redundant. So we wanted to make sure we had two of whatever camera we were going to use. And we went through a few different options to start with, but the two front runners were either shooting with a couple of red Scarlets or a couple of C300s.
Okay.
And I generally found that the C300 for me is easier to get through a day with less support than a red workflow or a red package in general. Reds are great, and high resolution stuff is awesome. and they're robust and they can really handle a lot. But the issue being they suck up a lot of batteries, and when you're shooting 4K RAW, you're churning through tons of data. And I had to think about not only what we were going to have to do with on set in terms of keeping up with, keeping that many batteries on charge, big V-Lock batteries on charge all day in these remote locations. So that alone is a huge expense just to make sure that you have enough to cover you there, and then also what our data wrangler was going to have to deal with at the end of the day. In terms of what may be 128 gigs a day for a C300 would be hundreds of gigs, or almost probably a terabyte of shooting in relationship. And yeah, you lose a lot. We didn't shoot it in RAW. We had to shoot in the we had a dual system where we did the internal Canon MXF format to compact flash cards, but then we also used a Samurai Blade and a Pix 240 in conjunction, depending on what our setups were, to record ProRes 422 to get the most that we could out of the image.
Yeah.
And Andy, Jeff, and I had also talked early on about the style that we wanted to shoot with, and our dream was to shoot a movie in anamorphic, which is taking a lens. An anamorphic lens essentially squeezes your image vertically so that when you pop it out, it's extra wide. And that can be achieved in two ways. One is optically, which would be using a proper anamorphic lens, and the other way to do it is just to crop the top and the bottom. But the thing about anamorphic lenses, they're huge, they're rare, they're expensive, and so we had kind of played around with some other ideas, and our second AC / data wrangler / movie operator, Brent Schnarr, pointed out to us that Lettuce actually makes an anamorphic adapter that works on the front of Zeiss compact prime lenses, which we had a set of. And it was kind of a perfect solution to shoot this in an interesting way, still shoot anamorphic, but in a way that was friendly to our budget. And there were a lot of things that weren't necessarily anamorphic, didn't have some of the anamorphic characteristics like lens flares and stuff like that you might get out of a $30,000 lens. But I mean, we still were able to maximize resolution and really get a nice looking image.
So here's a question to both, just to tack onto that, Joe, for you and Doug. So when you're out there and you're on the ground doing this, or when you're sort of figuring out your gear list of what you're going to bring out there in order to get the job done, and the redundancy and the power, like you mentioned, Joe, having everything charged, and there's no real margin for error. Plus, you're looking at these big budget cameras. That C300 is not cheap, right? Mm-hmm. And then you brought multiple of them. I think you said 3, right? So why did you go that direction instead of taking one of the cheaper options, like from Sony, the A7S, which shoots 4K, or the Panasonic GH4, which shoots 4K? One of those options instead of going with more of a purpose-built system like the C300.
We actually had more than we shot with the bulk of the film. We did have a GH4, and we had that reserved for aerial stuff as well as one of our small. We had 2 Movi rigs with us. We had the M5 and the M10, and the M5 was set up to work with the GH4, and we used it for a few shots here and there. To be honest, the reason I stuck with the C300 is because I knew it the best. Okay. I shot, and in those situations where we're moving quickly and there is zero margin of error, it's not that I had any doubt that we could get a great looking image from those cameras. I just didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And with the C300, since I use it every day, it was more of a, I know exactly how to hit this sensor in the right way in this lighting condition and know that I'm going to get what we need.
Yeah. That's Go ahead.
The other practical reality is the A7S and the GH4 weren't around for Joe to be able to test before we left. So we couldn't. I mean, we had Panasonic was nice enough. Tom Curley was nice enough to send one out for us to shoot behind the scenes with and do some second unit pickups with. But it just wasn't available for us to even consider it at that point.
That's cool.
And I think that was the key component is that Joe and I have been well, we've all been working together, but just in the last year, Joe and I have shot some stuff for other things on the C300 with those compact primes. So when we were having the discussion, and it was very much something that was kind of in that familiar range.
Mm-hmm.
Given all of the other variables that we knew we would encounter overseas, this was a thing where like, yeah, let's have a reliable camera package that there's fewer questions about, so that we can put all our energy into whatever's going to come at us.
Because we forgot about mentioning the most complex factor in this, which is Joe has the Steadicam on for over half the film. As you watch the Kickstarter video and you see the movement, Joe is wearing a Steadicam in half of the 60 locations we shot at for half of the time, right? So it isn't just that it's a camera and which camera it is. He is always moving, always carrying over 50 pounds. What really makes sense in that equation?
Wow. Mm-hmm. How did you guys manage audio? What was the setup for that piece of it?
Sean Doyle is our audio mixer, and he had a boom operator for most of it. And I can't, to be honest, I can't remember what his recorder is. He has like an 8-channel recorder with wireless Daxcom units that so he had a hidden lav and a boom on every shot.
And Sean probably had one of the hardest jobs. Clean audio is always important, but when we're trying to tell a story about 2 people and being the only 2 people in Iceland, there are only 250,000 people in Iceland, and there are about 300,000 tourists. So we knew we could get it mostly empty, but we weren't locked. Like, we could shoot anywhere. It was amazing where we could shoot, and we could have a mall to ourselves. We could have hardware stores. But once we're in Reykjavik, we can't shut down streets.
Right.
And so even when it's clean audio, Sean will tell us there's a car 4 blocks away, right? Because he's that good, and we want someone that good. So the world didn't quit, even though we demanded a story that said the world quit. And so if anyone, like, when Sean had a good day, Jeff and I had the best day, just because we were so happy that Sean was able to get clean audio. And what was, Joe said it, wind constantly, like wind alone, but just the amount. There will be 10 minutes of blooper reels where you'll hear Riley and Janai, played by Micah Monroe and Matt O'Leary, where they're just like, where'd everyone go? And then a car would go by. Where'd everyone go? Then 3 people would walk by. Where'd everyone go? Then a drunk would go by, right? So it's there's more than 10 minutes of footage of them saying the world is empty and people walking by. And Sean in audio, the level that he had to do to try to get clean audio was incredible, and we're nothing but grateful for him for it.
You know what, I was going to ask about that. Like, films like yours and like, say, like I Am Legend with Will Smith, where it's an apocalyptic future and everyone's gone, and you're shooting in these scenes that ordinarily would be packed with people, but they somehow manage. I mean, I'm sure there's CG and all that stuff, but how, like the hardware scene in your trailer, they're going through a Home Depot. Did you guys arrange to go in when it was closed, or like what were the logistics around making a world appear devoid of people?
That's exactly what we did. We negotiated with locations like Bauhaus, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Which is the Icelandic equivalent of Home Depot.
Okay.
We showed up at 11 o'clock at night after they were closed. That was our first shoot of the night. And so we went in, and there was no one there. But for a lot of the things that you see in Reykjavik, we were literally, kind of guerrilla blocking off streets. There'd be one person down at the end of the street. We'd be on walkies and say, Dave Hall or First AD would say action, and then 2 of us would be blocking off the street, just kind of politely saying, we're shooting a film, would you please not walk down the street? And every now and then someone would basically just drive on through, or we had one drunk woman, accost our crew and try to walk into the shot, which was just amazingly funny. It wasn't funny at the moment because we were trying to get things done. But in retrospect, it's hilarious because that's one of the funny things you think about Reykjavik, because you get 20 hours of sunlight, and you figure we know it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and yes, it looks like it's noon.
Yeah.
All the Icelanders are going to be asleep. Well, not always the case, particularly not on Friday and Saturday night, where people will be out in the streets until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes. So
yeah, we're definitely going to need a blooper reel from you guys, because the drunk lady and the actors saying, "Oh, there's no one here," and then lovers walk by.
It's amazing the location-wise. We had a location manager and scout, Arnar, who really found locations. And he found a couple that have never been filmed at before. Brienne did a lot of coordinating. One of our producers, Brienne Lerman, did a lot of coordinating. And the fact we're able to get a mall to ourselves for $200 is insane, right? Like there's the fact we could get a horse farm to ourselves for $200. I mean, just we did around 60 locations for I think under $10,000, and if that was in America, it'd be 10 times that. I mean, it was. What's great is
it's just the location fees.
What'd you say, Doug?
And that's just the location fees. Not like when you talk about I Am Legend, there's a whole crew of 10 times the size of our crew just keeping the streets clear.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
that's the key achievement, I feel like, for the entire Boca crew is that, I mean, I Am Legend, there's the whole second units locking down blocks at a time. Our crew was 14, 16 of us.
Wow.
That's everybody. That's everybody. So when you've got, when your crew count is in the teens, locking down an intersection is no small feat.
And there's probably one of my favorite shots. Man, there's so many that I love that Joe did. But there's one outside our hotel where Riley and Janai are trying to figure out what's going on. So it's meant to be 10 a.m. We shot it at 4 a.m., 3 to 4 a.m. And Joe is doing circles around them, so you can see the two highways and the two roads completely empty.
Yeah.
To just prove the entire world is empty. If you can't prove Reykjavik's empty, it doesn't matter if you can prove everything else is empty. Unless you can prove the city is empty right away, we have a problem. And watching Joe with a Steadicam having to get that shot, and then all of a sudden at 3:15 would be the next airport, which is about 40, 50 minutes away. All the shuttles would show up at 3:15. That would just pick up the next 6 people. We'd wait 15 more minutes, do the shot again, while the camera's either on his shoulder or having to put down. So I mean, a lot of credit goes to Mike and Matt, our two actors, because we're asking them to do a lot of intimate, a lot of reflective scenes, a lot of, as you said, cerebral, a lot of just movement, and we're interrupting it all the time because we didn't have that budget that said the world would stop all the time.
Yeah.
In our indoor locations, it's great. On a glacier, it's fine, right? Behind a waterfall, we could pull some things off. But downtown Reykjavik were some of the hardest things, and I'm most proud of the cast and the crew for what they tried to achieve there.
Now, on the side of photography, how does that piece work for the uninitiated filmmaker, right? So what's the interaction between the director and the director of photography? Do you guys just sort of sketch out, like, as from the director's standpoint, this is kind of what the shot is, here's a script, and then Joe takes that and conceptualizes what the photography is going to be, or is it much more prescriptive than that? How does that piece work?
I think it's probably... I suspect that relationship is unique to every film. Every film's gonna have its own interpretation of that. For Boca, it really was. I feel like Andy, Joe, and I were really just a team in creating the images from different perspectives. Obviously, Joe was overseeing all the actual execution and technical aspect of it. But in pre-production, we did a lot of shot listing. We did storyboarding. We discussed after we had our location scout. We discussed the locations and how we would approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you arrive at a location on a day and realize that all of that prep almost is meaningless because the location has its own challenges, and you almost have to start over on the day. The prep, of course, is not meaningless. It's critical in allowing you to reset on the day.
Right.
But yeah, it was I don't know. It was all the stuff. It was shot listing. It was storyboarding, and it was constant discussions of, oh well, we can't do that. So what can we do?
Yeah, planning. It's kind of, it reminds me of General Colin Powell used to say, "No battle plan survives first contact with the enemy."
Well,
you can plan all day long; it doesn't matter when you're in it, right?
We like to saying that we couldn't use all the time because you get so exhausted when people say, "Oh, we'll fix it in post." We tried to say we'll fix it in pre, like just plan enough that. But something I would say really in that relationship with Joe, Jeff, and myself is really Joe's relationship with our two actors, Micah and Matt. They built a level of trust very quickly because Joe's doing so much on Steadicam. You are creating these things on the fly, and what was exciting for Jeff and I to see was Mike and Matt's relationship and trust in Joe, and that direct relationship where they knew how to bob in and out of these really complex movements through various stages, various locations while he's wearing the Steadicam. And so as much as it was the three of us in our relationship, we were really excited by the relationship Mike and Matt had with Joe specifically.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience to have that, and particularly situations where it's a very there were some where it was sort of letting them wander through a space, seeing what they wanted to do, and I was more keeping up with them, and that was more of the sort of the filler, the little bits here and there. They weren't particular story points, but there were other ones where you could just feel, Micah and Matt working as hard as I am, and we're all working together to make it the best possible image, best scene we possibly can. And that relationship we had was incredible. I've never had that experience with other actors.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always wonder what that interaction is, because you watch the credits on films and you see director of photography and all this, and I always wonder, what does that mean? Does that mean this is the person that's consulting on composition, and then you go back, and go sip your coffee while it's being shot, or actually are you blocking out shots and saying, compositionally, the actor should be coming from that direction, even though the storyboard said it. I always wonder what that DP actually means, and now I kind of know.
Well, yeah, and like Jeff said, I mean, it's kind of unique to every situation. But I would say all of the above, everything you just said. It's my job as director of photography to take what Jeff and Andy are looking for and work with my team underneath me, whether it's my assistant cameramen or camera operators or my gaffer and grips that are working on lighting for me, on how we can achieve it and be the eye of the story.
Yeah.
I would throw in there's one other role there that is a script supervisor, and Kat Gotti, who was our script supervisor, the first time she ever did it. Both of our actors were just raving about how many films have you done, because this is obviously your 10th or 12th. And the script supervisor's job is literally to sit there and go through the script, and as we're shooting each day, to break down, and we shot, because films aren't shot in order. They don't go in the order that you see it in the production or in the final product. So we might shoot scene 1 on the 15th day of shooting, and she's literally there saying, okay, when we set up for this shot, she was wearing a red hoodie with her hair down, right, and her face was dirty. So we have to then go to our makeup, Margaret Kerrigan, and have that recreated and come back in. And so a lot of that ties back in, because as Joe and Andy and Jeff are trying to get the emotional content and the framing set up, then you have the script supervisor coming back in, making sure everything ties together. Because if it's not cohesive, it feels like it was shot out of order, then the suspension of disbelief breaks down. So that's another part of that whole process.
Now, did you guys mentioned that you were shooting this in 4K, and are you going to deliver it in 4K, or will you be using the fact that you shot in such a high resolution so that you can deliver in a lower resolution and then punch into frames and that sort of thing?
Well, we actually, I may have misspoke. I think we were talking about possibly using the Scarlett and shooting in 4K, but the C300 is just 1080p.
Oh, okay.
It's so not the yeah.
We did shoot a couple of second unit pieces in 4K and on the 5D Mark III or II. Mm-hmm. Those will just be, as Joe mentioned, cropped in. So it's not there's not a lot of that in the film.
Yeah, I mean we have a variety of formats and camera bodies. But our primary rig of the C300 with the anamorphic lens, the C300 is a 1080 sensor, but with the anamorphic, once we de-squeeze it, our final resolution will be 2554 by 1080.
Okay.
So it's the anamorphic widescreen version of 1080.
It's going to be brilliant. I can't wait to see it. So then let's jump into post-processing real quick and how all that's going to happen. So the whole gist of the Kickstarter campaign that you guys ran was to raise funds so that you could take some bags of cash and drop it on post-processing people to make all the magic happen, which I assume you now have a couple more bags of cash than you anticipated since the success of that thing. So what does that look like? Is the post-processing going to happen on Final Cut Pro 10? Is it Premiere? Is it iMovie? What's going to be used to cut this thing down?
That was a big discussion, for sure. It's being cut right now. We're in the middle of the edit, and after a fair amount of assessment, we did land on Final Cut Pro 10.
Okay.
And there's the question of your NLE is similar to the Canon Nikon debate and the Mac PC debate and the Android iPhone debate.
No right answer. Yeah.
Everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
Well, on the Mac PC debate, there's probably a right answer, but the rest of them. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Depends on if you want the film to be finished or not. So.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We call them tools and we discuss them as tools, but then we treat them as religious iconography or something.
Yes. Yes.
An NLE is a screwdriver, and I can put it together with a Phillips head or a flathead, but eventually I'll choose one.
Yeah.
The choice to go with Final Cut Pro 10 ultimately was driven in part similarly to the decision to shoot with the Canon C300. It was the editor that we knew the best, had the most experience on, and felt that given our aggressive post-production schedule, it's going to be the editor that will allow us to cut the fastest.
Yeah.
It's in terms of speed, I don't see anything. There's not really a comparison there. So as long as you can make sure the other bases are covered, workflow with the audio mix, and workflow with visual effects, and workflow with the color grade. As long as all of that is good, and we did tests, full round trip tests and all of those. Then as long as you feel confident about that, then full steam ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting, like what you said about the end result was driving the choices, and the gear that you guys were familiar with, like in the case of Joe knowing the C300, doesn't mean the other gear wasn't good or couldn't do the job. It was like, okay, I'm expert on this particular samurai sword. I'm not going in the battle with a new one, use my own samurai sword. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, in marketing, there's this saying that it talks about the whole idea of features and benefits. That when you're selling something, like say you're selling drills, you're not selling the drill and the features of the drill. You're selling holes in the wall, right? So you're selling the end result is what people want. They could care less about how they get there as long as they get there. And you guys are the hole in the wall for you was a smooth, as low a price or lowest budget production as you could get to, right?
Yeah.
Well, the big part of that at any level of the production has to do with the people who are executing it and their confidence level and their ability, and a lot of that is driven by the tools they're comfortable with. So as these decisions came up in pre-production, a lot of it was, okay, well, we rely on Joe. We know Joe, what Joe can produce, and Joe is comfortable with the C300. It's not really even a conversation anymore, right? Because Joe's confident in it, therefore the rest of us are confident in it. So,
you guys are shooting mountains and mountains of data, right? So where and how did you manage that on location, right? So I can't imagine how much footage that you guys shot with these monster cameras out there. The hard drives and hard drives of data. What did you use to store it all? And I'm sure, knowing Joe, that I'm sure there was some level of redundancy / tridundancy going on there. So
there was in fact tridundancy. I helped put that together with Brent, so I think I can probably speak to that. We built two 16 terabyte RAIDs, and every day Brent, who was the DIT, along with a bunch of other hats he wore in the camera crew, would bring the cards back and back them up, make redundant files, and then also do dailies in H.264 format. I think he ran those through Sorensen and Squeeze, if I'm not mistaken, so that Andy, Jeff, and Joe could walk through everything and get a sense of where the shots were and if there were any pickups that we needed to do, beyond that. And there was redundancy. We built 2 RAIDs out, so we had 2 copies on site, and then we also had a bare drive set up so that once everything was copied over, we made a bare drive backup, which we then took off site and shipped back home. So while we were, we all came up with that, there is no copy of the film unless there are 3 copies of the film world. So that's the way we worked it. And so we would, one of them would come over to me. We all lived in different apartments. One would be off site with me. And the original plan was we were going to ship them back, but things got so harried that the third copy stayed with me. So now there's 1 copy with me in Las Vegas. There's a copy with Jeff in San Francisco, and there's a copy with Joe in San Francisco now. Yep. So yeah, there's a ton of data. I think the total footprint for the data was 13.5 terabytes.
Wow, that's crazy.
So lots of footage.
That's crazy. So back to the 4K question again. I know you didn't shoot in 4K, but and I would assume largely because, like Doug was saying, the tools weren't there yet, and the familiarity with the C300 was like going back in time or going fast forwarding to the next project. Would you shoot it in 4K? You know, and if so, why or why not?
I wouldn't be opposed to 4K, but as long as it was set up in a way that we could manage it. You know, I think if given the opportunity to shoot this film over again, I still would stick to my guns and not shoot it in 4K just because it's more data than we really wanted to use. And the other thing about the C300 is that the sensor itself is actually a 4K sensor, but it only encodes the footage in HD. So what that leaves you with is a very similar quality to, say, a RED that you shoot in 4K and then scale it down to HD anyways. You're getting the same sharpness, same look to it, but with half the data. And we know that we're only delivering in 1080p. To me, it seemed like it was going to be a little bit more than we needed to deal with.
Yeah.
And I also, as a sort of pretentious director of photography, I'm a little uppity about cropping in to footage, so I would never recommend shooting 4K. It's a very producery thing to say, let's shoot in 4K so we can always punch it in post,
right.
And that kills me inside.
A little bit of you dies inside when people do that, right?
Well, we spend so much
I just want to say that as a producer, I agree with Joe.
Yeah, and you spend so much time trying to get perfect a frame and to make it look exactly how you want. Everybody's signing off on set, and to have someone go back in there and make an adjustment without you there is sort of a horrifying idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my main thing. And Canon does have a 4K camera. They do have the C500. You need an external recorder for it, I believe. But you know, that would probably, again, I'm a big Canon guy. I love working with the cameras, and I love the image I get out of it. And it's where my familiarity is. You know, I got my start with DSLRs and 5Ds, 5D Mark III, all that stuff. So to me, I would probably lean in that direction if we were going to do it again.
So Joe, when you moved from the DSLR on the Canon side to the more motion-centric C300, was that like did like angels sing a little bit, and you're like,
it was
finally I have my gear?
Yeah, it was an amazing day for me. The first day I had a bigger camera, and like I said, I mean, I had shot a lot on Reds and the higher end Sony stuff like an F3 and stuff like that a lot, but yeah, there was just something. It was an image that I was used to because it's designed. The sensor is designed by the same company as everything else I've been working with, and one of the biggest things, and one thing I neglected to talk about with the C300 that kind of made it the front runner in our decision was its low light capability is in its price range, and what we were looking at, to me, had the most promise considering what we were trying to do. We were moving so quickly. Our lighting package was really small. There was very little we could do to really augment. There was fills here and there, a lot of indirect bouncing, but for the most part, we relied on windows and just sort of the natural, soft, overcast light of Iceland for the exteriors. But what I've pushed the C500 C300 to 2,500, 3,000, 4,000 before I kind of start to really consider it being a problem. Yeah. And its native ISO is 850, so you're already starting in a place where you're going to get a lot of dynamic range out of that sensor, even though you're pushing it at high ISOs, which I didn't get that. I didn't have that experience with other cameras in its price range.
That's cool. That's cool. All right, so let's wrap this up a little bit, guys. So I wanna first of all, you mentioned that this was in post now, so that's going along. When are you going to be done? When is this going to be at a point where we can go see it? And then where are you planning on distributing the film? Is it going to be a Tribeca Film Festival? Are we going to see it in a theater near me, on Vimeo, YouTube? Where?
I guess I'll jump in on this one first. So a lot of films die in post, right? The way that they die in production, they die in marketing, and they die in everything else. And so our film won't live in post forever. It won't go to post heaven or hell. So for us, we're heading into submission season for festivals. Sundance, the winter spring festivals are Sundance, Berlin, Tribeca, South by Southwest, and Cannes is really that 5-month schedule. So we're working on the rough cut right now, so we can have it out there and submit to Sundance. We'll go from there, right? Like the odds are against a film for submission. I'm not saying that out of humility. It's just like that's where it is. One of the other reasons that we did a Kickstarter campaign is we wanted to put something out there and prove that we're making something relevant, right? And if we're making something relevant, and if we are trying to make something compelling and don't go hat in hand, but actually try to put something out there, discipline and hard work, good things happen. So we've been contacted by some of the bigger distributors already. We've been contacted both by theatrical ones, online ones, kind of hybrid ones. In the earliest discussions, maybe they'll go somewhere, maybe they won't. But it's again, it was like people think about Kickstarter in terms of just getting money or just building an audience or just doing this. Well, it's like you do the hard work. There's actually a lot of wins that can come out of it. So I mean, we don't know what our distribution plan looks like yet, right? Like we're very much open to the models are changing so quickly for indie films, right? Where we're fortunate enough is that on a bad day, this film still gets on iTunes, it gets on Amazon, it gets on Hulu, it gets on Netflix, it gets on 300 other online aggregators. That's a bad day. 2 years ago, a bad day was your film would never be seen by anyone if you're an indie filmmaker, even 2 years ago. And so, not saying that that is our bar, but a bad day is people will see our film and we'll get it out there throughout the world.
Yeah.
A good day is more than that. A good day is a bigger audience. A good day may be offline and online, some form of 25 cities and some form of online in different languages. So I mean, we'll go from there. But it's an amazing thing to see just in the past couple years of how indie films can now find audiences in different ways.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, yeah, the same goes for photography. Back in the olden days of shooting film, right. Yeah, you were limited by geography or how many people could see a print. These days, distribution options are abound, right? And commerce options as well. If you want to charge for the film, charge for downloads, and then of course you guys funded it, which I want to talk about next, is with Kickstarter. So you're ahead of the game there. It's not like you maxed out your Visa cards in order to fund the film, and now we have to make at least X amount of dollars or I'm going to lose the house. You know, it wasn't that kind of proposition. Tell me about the Kickstarter campaign. How did that go? What were some of the learnings that you guys learned? And now, you know, what's hindsight? What would you do differently now that you know what you know today?
I guess I'll jump in first. So Jeff and I knew since actually the beginning of Boca we'd want to do a Kickstarter campaign. We love the idea of crowdfunding. I love the idea of innovative R&D, not just charitable like innovation, but like innovative R&D is just a pretty amazing thing. There's so many people debating about what people should do, whereas there are these small pockets of people just making things, right? Putting their art out there, putting their talent out there, and so we wanted to be a part of that. Partly again for being able to build some dollars towards this to see if we made something relevant, partly to build an online audience, right? The beginning of an online audience there, and partly again to see, we had over 30 composers reach out to us. We've had some visual effects houses and things, and so relationships that we're making because of this. Our script supervisor that Doug mentioned before, Kat Gaddy, was our Kickstarter producer. She and one of our other producers, Brianne Lerma, were kind of heads down in this and in helping to work on the campaign. And so the first thing I tell anyone is that if you're doing a Kickstarter campaign, have a producer, have someone other than you work on the campaign. I think what helped us is it wasn't as much as Jeff and I would love to say it's us, it's not us. Like there are a lot of campaigns with 2 people, and those are hard, right? Like we had a team of more than 10 people, half the crew, Joe, Doug specifically, like these were 2 people who really reached out to their networks. For us, and people, again, think about Kickstarter and like, I'm going to reach 500 people, I'm going to reach 1,000. You should think about Kickstarters, I'm going to reach 1 person, and I'm going to send 1 person an email. I'm going to send the next person I know an email, and I'm going to work Facebook. As much as I have my own challenges with Facebook, it is the best tool for this in terms of just, I'm going to message people, and that feels a little odd, and then just trying to keep our video in the stream for 4 days. Like, we did not actually slam our audience by saying give every day. We made the 1 video and the 1 post at the beginning saying, we're going to ask you to do 3 things. Watch the video, consider backing the project, share the project. And so with some relationships we created, we had over 1,700 shares in our first week, Facebook shares. And so the video we were told by people, it's like, wow, you guys are really hitting us, and we weren't. It kept getting shared and shared and shared. And so, I mean, it's the same thing as a film, which is, it is about pre-production. Kickstarter campaign should be decided almost before you do it. You should do as much research. Doug is great with Kickstarter, has a lot of experience in terms of really understanding how the mechanics of it works. And so we just studied. We studied the way we'd study for aspects of film, and we just did the work. The surreal part, I think, for all of us is we did it like we launched it right when we get back, right? Because that's the time to do it. So Jeff, who cut that beautiful video, and really Jeff just found that voice in the video of what we wanted. That's within 2.5 weeks of coming back from Iceland, right? I mean, the last thing we thought we were going to do is show that much of the film then. And we're grateful we did. We've been rewarded for sharing this film, right? Normally Jeff and I are actually pretty quiet, pretty reserved in terms of we keep secrets until something is real. Sure. And on this film, we just decided, no, we're gonna just put it out there, and if we do that, we'll be rewarded. We've been rewarded every step of the way. More crew members, more ability to get the film made. So I mean, that's been Kickstarter, at least from my point of view.
Yeah. No, Doug, when you since you're the Kickstarter expert and you have a body of knowledge on this, I've seen Kickstarter campaigns that, they start well and they fizzle. Either they don't get funded or they go through the roof, and the people running it, maybe they ask for $50,000 and they get up to like $500,000. What's the magic in there? What's the magic of creating a successful campaign, or is there magic?
Well, I've been fortunate to have some good friends who had some hugely successful Kickstarters, and so I had the benefit of reaching out to them before we got started. And I think one of the big things is, we had a film in the can when we did our Kickstarter. You see a lot of projects that come back and say, we want to go shoot a movie in Iceland, and it's going to cost us, $500,000. Please fund our Kickstarter. Well, that's a pretty humongous goal to get to, right? And if you're like most of us, this is our first film. We've all worked in production. We've all worked in live or commercial. We've all touched it, and I think that's one of the things that makes this team, in some respects, kind of unique. And I don't mean to be disparaging, but you see a lot of people who are like, I just want to make a movie, but they don't have any inkling of how to do it. Now, our crew all wanted to make a movie, and all of us have touched aspects of production in one degree or another, and many of us have a lot of skill there. So coming together, we were able to put a good product together. But then we had a product in place before we went out to the Kickstarter community, and I think that says a lot. And you see this a lot, whether it's a video project or whether it's, like I'm a big fan of Peak Design. The guys that they make these amazing camera straps and stuff. Yeah. And they've already got their prototype done. They've got the product ready to go to production before they put anything out, right? Before they come to you and say, hey, here's our new product. And I almost backed them by a knee-jerk reaction because I always know that they're going to put something good because they've already done the work. Yeah. And so that's one of the things we did. We came back with the film in the can, right? We shouldn't have to go back to Iceland to get more footage, right? Mm-hmm. Or to do more pickups because we had an aggressive schedule. We worked it hard. Everybody worked long hours and days, but we already had that product in the can. So when we came back, we're just asking for some help to get to the finish line, pretty much. So I think that's a big aspect of it, and it's easy. You see all these big Kickstarters that are super successful, and it's like, wow, I should do that. I don't need to put any money. I don't need to have any skin in the game. Well, everybody in this film had skin in the game before we even got on a plane to Iceland, and I think that says a lot for the cast and crew, the people that came together to make the film. But then I think that carries over when you go out to ask in a Kickstarter, look, we've already committed ourselves to this project. To Jeff's earlier go back a year in time when Jeff and Andy started putting this together and like, okay, blinders on, we're going to make a movie, right? We're focused, eyes on the prize. As each one of us came on board, we all had that same mentality, eyes on the prize. And so when we got back from Iceland, we had a product that was worth putting out there, and I think that's part of what the Kickstarter community is responding to. You obviously see it in the Kickstarter trailer. So
yeah, what you say, it resonates because it's kind of like, you're helping your kid buy his first car or buy a car, right? And it's a completely different conversation if your kid comes to you and says, hey, I want to buy a car, can I have X thousand dollars to do it, versus, hey, I've saved up $12,000 and I just need another $7,500, can you help me? So there's skin in the game, like you said, and you feel like, okay, this person has put the effort in and they're not trying to get a free ride or trying to get something for nothing. They actually have valued my effort and my contribution. They really need my help. So maybe that's the key to the successful Kickstarter, is showing people that you're in it and you have skin in the game before you start asking for money, right?
Yeah. And I think the other key thing is, I think we all see a lot of Kickstarters. go by that succeed or fail or whatever. And I think the successful ones, they don't just happen. Kickstarter, doing a campaign is, it's basically a full-time job to do it well. And we had an awesome team, of Kat, Gaddy, and Brienne, Lermont, and Andy, and Doug. We're really hitting it. So it wasn't just about, oh, we went to Iceland, here's a clip, and then you get your address book and just blast off an email to everybody. I mean, there is a strategy, there is a lot of time and effort that goes into really positioning it and how to deploy it. So it's not just, okay, every day we're posting on Facebook, hey, we're still looking for money. It's you got to do it intelligently. You have to do it strategically, and you can't underestimate what that is. And I think that's true for not just the Kickstarter, but for everything. I mean, one of the things that I know happened with Boca is that we made sure to fill the crew with people who are really talented and skillful individuals. Obviously you do that, but I think it's a matter of not underestimating any component of the production, and that goes through Kickstarter. Don't underestimate Kickstarter. It's a great platform, but it's not a switch that you flip on and money starts flying at you.
Right. Yeah.
I wish it worked. That'd be pretty fabulous.
Yeah, that would be an interesting business model, right?
If I had one other bit of Kickstarter advice, aside from have a product before you go to market, would be grateful. I think one of the big things that even in the way Andy and Jeff sign off on the Kickstarter video, with the shout out to the Kickstarter community in general. But then as we followed up, as people gave things, and particularly if they gave us a shout out on Twitter and said, we backed Boca, we were paying attention to the Twitter feeds and just saying thanks, right? Just saying, thanks, and that same thing in Facebook. Thanks for backing us. Thanks for being there for us. Mm-hmm. And we saw a lot of people follow up with that by, following back up without us asking to say, a week later, hey, Boca's, three-quarters of the way funded. Go back out. Just by saying thank you and being genuinely appreciative of the support that you get. I think that goes a long way on a Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, Frederick, I think you see this probably with your brand all the time, which is how do you move likes? How do you move thumbs up, right? Like people confuse likes and advocacy all the time. In fact, liking can stop advocacy because you think you were an advocate, right? So for us, we were extremely grateful that people went beyond likes and actually decided to back something and then decided to share something and then decided to put their name next to that thing they shared, right? Like that is, it's not just that it was about Boca, it's that I just appreciate action. And clicking on a like, as nice as it can be, as good as it can make you feel good, it's not advocacy, it's not movement, it's not action. And so to see actually that kind of movement come together for Boca has been very humbling and something amazing for the entire crew. Yeah. And nothing but we're grateful for.
No, I agree. I think I would like to see the dollar bill become the new like. Right? So, I mean, I would love to see a release of Facebook where the liking something can be equated to be as easy as a click. So you guys are, if Facebook did a Kickstarter type implementation where people could go to your thing and just by clicking donate $1 to it, or just like it. So, click this and you like it, no money's exchanged. Click this and you really like it and they get $1 or whatever denomination. That would be amazing. And
that would be awesome.
Yeah. So, hey, Facebook, if you're listening, you can go ahead and take that. So what's next for you guys, man? What's next? Now that this film is in the can on the shooting side, post-production is still going on and distribution and all that stuff. But what's next? Is there another film coming? Are we seeing Bokeh 2? What's happening?
This time it's Bokier. It doesn't work that way.
This time it's F1.2.
As long as we had an ER to the word, I think it becomes a sequel.
Or a prequel. Do a prequel. It's in sharp focus.
Boca NATO 2.
Oh, nice. Way to add NATO to it. Jeff and I, we owe our entire crew, we owe our investors, we owe Kickstarter, we owe everyone to be 100% heads down on Boca until it's done. That's usually why films don't finish, is because you distract yourselves. Sure. All that being said, this is our first film. There is going to be a second film, and there will be another. And it's not, again, to begin with, we kind of have to take the same approach. Maybe the budget goes up, maybe the camera moves to an Alexa, maybe we get 4 more crew members, but we're not waiting for a festival to tell us we're allowed to make another film, right? We're not waiting for it could take a year and a half to get an agent, even if you get a festival. It could take 2 years for it to be distributed, even if you have the best things going for you. And so what we're not going to do is wait to make a second film. So we're going to finish Bokeh, we're going to go heads down, and then Jeff and I are talking our ideas now. We're excited to work with this crew. We're excited to add some new crew members to it and go from there. But this is what's always been exciting about Bokeh is Bokeh's our first film, not our last.
I love it. I think that's a perfect way to end this. So congratulations, guys, on doing this on the film. I can only imagine the logistics that were involved in putting this thing together and going overseas with a group of 14 plus people to shoot this, and and now the fun is just beginning, right? Because now you're in post and you got to get it out there, and so I think a lot of people discount how much work goes into something like this because they can just, hey, I could shoot that with my iPhone. I'll just click a button and I got it. It's a little bit more detailed than that, as Joe is smiling over there. Yeah, it's a little bit. So, guys, thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been educational and inspirational. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
All right. See you soon.
Take care.